Accessible parking permits play an important role in helping individuals with mobility challenges access public spaces safely and conveniently. These permits allow qualified individuals to park in designated accessible parking spaces that are closer to building entrances and often provide extra room for safely entering and exiting a vehicle. Because these permits offer valuable parking privileges, questions often arise about who is allowed to use them. One common question people ask is whether it is legal to borrow someone else's accessible parking permit. Understanding the rules surrounding permit use is important because misuse can lead to serious consequences. In general, accessible parking permits are issued to individuals, not vehicles. This means the permit belongs to the person who qualifies for it due to a medical condition that limits mobility. The permit can be used in different vehicles, but only when the eligible individual is present. This rule exists to ensure that accessible parking spaces remain available for people who truly need them. Because permits are issued to individuals, borrowing someone else's permit for personal use is usually not allowed. If a person uses a permit that was issued to someone else without that person being present in the vehicle, it is considered misuse in most jurisdictions. For example, if a family member lends their permit to a friend who wants to park closer to a store, that is generally illegal. Even if the friend intends to return the permit later, the act of using it without the eligible individual present violates parking regulations. Misuse of accessible parking permits can result in fines, penalties, or other consequences depending on local laws. In some areas, fines for improperly using accessible parking spaces can be substantial. Authorities may also confiscate the permit if it is found to be used improperly. These rules exist because accessible parking spaces are limited resources designed specifically for individuals with mobility impairments. When someone uses an accessible parking space without proper authorization, it may prevent a person with a disability from accessing the space they need. However, there are situations where another person may legally use a permit while driving. If the permit holder is present in the vehicle, the permit can be used even if someone else is driving. For instance, if a family member drives a person with a mobility disability to a doctor's appointment or grocery store, the permit can be displayed and used to park in an accessible space. In this situation, the permit is being used properly because the eligible individual is present. Similarly, caregivers who regularly transport individuals with disabilities may use the permit when assisting the permit holder with transportation. The key factor is always the presence of the person who was issued the permit. As long as that individual is entering or exiting the vehicle or being transported to or from the destination, the permit may be used. It is also important to understand that accessible parking permits are portable. Because they are issued to individuals rather than vehicles, they can typically be used in any vehicle the permit holder travels in. This flexibility allows individuals to use their permit whether they are driving their own car, riding with friends or family members, using a rental vehicle, or traveling in other forms of transportation. Despite this flexibility, responsibility for the permit remains with the person who received it. Permit holders should take care to ensure that their permit is not misused or borrowed by others without their presence. Allowing someone to use the permit improperly can still lead to penalties, even if the permit holder was not the one driving. Another important aspect of permit use involves displaying it properly. When parked in a designated accessible parking space, the permit must be clearly visible from outside the vehicle. This allows parking enforcement officers to verify that the vehicle is authorized to use the space. Display requirements may vary slightly depending on state regulations, but the permit must always be visible whenever the vehicle is parked in an accessible space. If a permit is used incorrectly or borrowed improperly, enforcement officers may issue a citation. In some cases, the permit may be confiscated or suspended if misuse is repeated. Because accessible parking permits are tied to an individual's eligibility, protecting the integrity of the program is essential. Accessible parking programs exist to support individuals who have genuine mobility limitations. These programs ensure that people who struggle to walk long distances can access buildings, services, and public spaces safely. When permits are borrowed or used improperly, it reduces the availability of accessible parking spaces for those who truly need them. Another issue related to borrowing permits involves misunderstandings about temporary use. Some people assume that borrowing a permit is acceptable if they only use it briefly, or if the permit holder gave permission. However, even with permission, using a permit without the eligible individual present is still considered misuse in most cases. Education and awareness can help reduce misuse of accessible parking permits. When people understand that these permits are intended only for the person who qualifies medically, they are more likely to respect the rules and ensure that accessible spaces remain available. For individuals who genuinely need accessible parking, applying for their own permit is the appropriate solution. If someone experiences mobility limitations due to a medical condition, a healthcare provider can evaluate whether they qualify for a disability parking permit. Once approved, the permit allows that individual to access accessible parking spaces legally and responsibly. Accessible parking spaces play a vital role in creating inclusive communities where individuals with mobility challenges can participate fully in everyday life. These spaces make it easier for people to access workplaces, healthcare facilities, stores, and public services. By understanding the rules surrounding accessible parking permits and respecting their intended use, everyone can help ensure that these accommodations remain available for the individuals who depend on them. Ultimately, accessible parking permits are not meant to be borrowed or shared casually. They are an important accessibility tool designed to support individuals with mobility impairments. Using permits responsibly helps preserve the fairness and effectiveness of accessible parking programs, ensuring that those who need these spaces most can continue to rely on them. We truly hope this video made things clearer for you. Navigating the disabled parking process can feel overwhelming, but you don't have to figure it out alone. If you need a handicapped placard or plate and want a simpler, more convenient option, visit handicappedparking.com. We connect you with licensed doctors online so you can complete everything from home without the stress or guesswork. Our mission is to make the process easier and help you gain the independence and mobility you deserve. If you're unsure about your eligibility or running into obstacles, reach out to us. We're here to help guide you every step of the way. Make sure to subscribe for more helpful information about handicap parking permits and drop your questions in the comments below. We're always glad to support our community. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.